They called it a reward, as if human lives could be wrapped in ribbon and handed over like gold coins or a new saddle. The smoke of the burned village still hung in the sky when the captain slapped my back and told me I had earned something special for my bravery. I had fought like a man possessed that day, not for glory, not for land, but because war leaves little room for choice. When the dust settled and the shouting stopped, I felt no pride, only the hollow ache that comes when a man survives something he shouldn't have. That was when they brought them to me, 2 young Apache twin sisters, wrists bound, eyes blazing with fury and grief. "Yours," the captain said with a grin that never reached his eyes. "A reward." The men laughed as if they had gifted me a prize stallion. But I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The sisters stood straight despite the ropes cutting into their skin, identical in face yet different in spirit. One stared at me with open defiance, the other with silent calculation. They were not property. They were not spoils. They were human beings ripped from their home. And in that moment, I felt more shame than victory. I led my horse forward, cutting their ropes loose before anyone could question it. "I'll handle them," I muttered, pretending it was strategy, pretending I had some plan to tame what they believed was wild. The men cheered, thinking I meant to break their spirit. They had no idea I had already made a decision that would cost me everything. I took the twins away from camp that night, telling the guards I needed privacy to train them. The lie tasted bitter. We rode for miles under a moon that seemed too bright for secrets. They didn't speak, but their silence screamed louder than words. Finally, when the campfires were nothing but distant embers, I stopped near a dry riverbed. I dismounted and stepped back, hands raised to show I meant no harm. "You're free," I said quietly, cutting the last of the ropes from their ankles. They didn't move at first. Freedom, when unexpected, feels like another trap. I removed my pistol from its holster and set it on the ground between us before stepping farther away. "I won't use you. I won't own you. Go." The sister with the fiercer eyes stepped forward first, rubbing her wrists. She said something in her language, sharp and questioning. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the distrust. The other sister studied my face as though searching for deceit. Minutes passed like hours. Then, slowly, they backed away, never turning their backs on me. I felt their fear, and I didn't blame them. War had taught them what men like me were capable of. As they reached the edge of the riverbed, the calculating one paused. She spoke one word in broken English, "Why?" It hit me harder than any bullet. Why indeed? Why would a soldier betray his own camp? Why would a man refuse what others would consider a gift? I swallowed hard. "Because you're not mine to keep," I answered. "And no one should belong to anyone." They exchanged a look only twins could share, then disappeared into the darkness like spirits reclaiming the night. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I would return to camp with some excuse about them escaping. But lies don't stay buried long. By dawn, the captain knew. His face turned red with rage as he accused me of treason. "You freed them," he hissed. "After everything?" I stood my ground, knowing full well the consequences. "They weren't spoils," I replied. "They were people." The men who had once called me brother now looked at me like I was the enemy. In their eyes, I had betrayed not just the army but the unspoken code of conquest. Punishment came swiftly. I was stripped of rank, beaten, and left tied to a post as a warning. As the sun burned overhead, I wondered if I had made a foolish choice. Pain clouded my thoughts, but deep beneath it was something stronger, peace. I had done what was right. Night fell again, and with it came whispers on the wind. I thought it was delirium at first, but then I saw movement beyond the camp's edge. 2 figures, silent and swift. Before I could react, shadows overwhelmed the guards. Knives flashed in moonlight, ropes were cut, and I collapsed into the arms of someone who smelled of sage and smoke. The twins. They had returned, not for revenge, not to flee farther, but to save the man who had freed them. My vision blurred as they guided me away from the camp. I realized then that freedom, once given, can return in ways you never expect. I had risked everything for them, and now they risked everything for me. The night swallowed us whole, and for the first time since the war began, I felt hope flicker like a fragile flame. If this story moves you, if you believe that even in the darkest times a single choice can change everything, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that courage isn't about winning battles, it's about protecting humanity when it would be easier to lose it. And this is only the beginning. They led me deep into the desert hills, where the land turned rugged and the stars seemed close enough to touch. My body ached from the beating, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. The twins worked in perfect harmony, one scouting ahead, the other supporting me when I stumbled. By dawn, we reached a hidden canyon dotted with mesquite trees and the faint remains of what must have been their people's temporary shelter. It was quiet now, haunted by absence. The fierce-eyed sister, whose name I would later learn was Apache, kept watch while the quieter twin, Helona, cleaned the blood from my wounds with surprising gentleness. We spoke little at first, separated by language and history. Yet in silence, trust began to grow. Over the following days, they taught me pieces of their language, and I taught them mine. Words became bridges where once there had only been walls. I learned that they had been taken during a raid meant to scatter their tribe. I learned that they had vowed never to let themselves be broken. And they learned that not all men in uniform shared the same heart. But peace is fragile when the world is built on conquest. It wasn't long before riders appeared on the horizon, my former comrades, tracking us. The captain would not let his property go without a fight. When Apache spotted them, her eyes darkened with resolve. "They come," she said simply. Helona handed me back my pistol, the same one I had placed on the ground when I freed them. I stared at it, conflicted. Violence had started this story. Would it end it too? We had little time. The canyon offered cover but not escape. I expected the twins to run, to leave me behind as a distraction. Instead, they stood beside me. In that moment, we were no longer soldier and captives. We were three souls bound by a shared decision to defy injustice. The riders entered the canyon at noon, dust swirling around them. The captain's voice echoed off the stone walls as he demanded surrender. I stepped forward, hands raised, not in submission, but in challenge. "They are not yours," I called out. "And neither am I." His laughter rang cold. The standoff stretched thin as wire. Then a shot rang out, not from me, not from the twins, but from one of the impatient soldiers. Chaos erupted. What followed was not a grand battle but a desperate struggle. The twins moved like wind through brush, swift and precise. I fired only when necessary, aiming to disarm rather than kill. This was not about revenge, it was about survival. One by one, the soldiers retreated, unprepared for resistance from those they deemed weak. The captain, wounded in pride more than flesh, was the last to leave. He glared at me with hatred. "You chose them over your own," he spat. I shook my head. "I chose what's right." And that was something he would never understand. When silence returned, it carried a different weight. The canyon felt less like a hiding place and more like a beginning. Apache approached me, her expression softer than I had ever seen. "You free us," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "Now we free you." I realized she meant more than the ropes or the camp. By standing with them, I had freed myself from a life of blind obedience. Helona smiled faintly, pointing toward the distant mountains. "Home," she whispered. They offered me a choice, to return to the world I knew or to walk with them into uncertainty. I thought about the uniform I had worn, the orders I had followed without question. Then I thought about the night I cut their ropes and the peace that followed. Some decisions define a lifetime. "I'll walk with you," I said. Together, we headed toward the mountains, not as master and slaves, not as captor and captives, but as equals bound by respect. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be hunger, danger, and the constant shadow of those who refuse to see others as human. But there would also be something stronger, freedom chosen, not given. And as the sun set behind us, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, I understood that the greatest reward I had ever received was not 2 lives handed to me in chains, it was the chance to do what was right when it mattered most. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that freedom, dignity, and courage are worth fighting for, make sure you subscribe to this channel and join our growing community. Together, we tell stories that remind the world that even one act of compassion can echo louder than 1,000 acts of cruelty. And there are many more powerful journeys waiting for you here.